Wide-eyed and hopeful, Lifia eagerly blurts out her acceptance. A handsome, dark-haired man with facial scars tenderly holds her hands, asking if she would be willing to stay by his side as his wife from now on. Smirking gently through his facial bandages, he awaits her answer. Flushing deeply, Lifia gazes at him in awe, overwhelmed by the profound happiness of finally being needed. Long ago in a frozen land, a great saintess offered her holy power, transforming the dead earth into a lush, green paradise. Now in the kingdom of Visteria, magic is paramount because the dying world tree must be sustained by the nobility's magical power. In this society, immense magical power manifests as vivid hair colors, with the absolute peak possessing black hair, leaving commoners with virtually nothing. Inside a grand estate, diligent maids silently tend to the towering windows. Lifia's noble family perfectly reflects this hierarchy, as her mother boasts glamorous pink hair while her father and younger sister, Sepia, share beautiful, sunset red locks. Looking up with innocent concern, young Sepia asks her big sister if she is all right. Lifia somberly realizes that in her entire vibrant family, she was the absolute only one born with pure white hair. Because Lifia possessed no magic to offer the crystals, a heavy burden immediately fell upon young Sepia's shoulders. The maids coldly gossip that Lady Sepia must wear powerful accessories to store magic, merely to compensate for Lifia's glaring incompetence. They continue to pity Sepia, lamenting how a child with such a small body is forced to push herself so hard. Hiding behind a bookshelf, young Lifia trembles at the terrifying thought of discovering she lacks even the slightest bit of magic during her upcoming 8th birthday temple measurement. Outside the Grand Temple, an official's voice rings out, congratulating a noble for successfully fulfilling their magical duties. As the previous noble steps away, the high priest calls Lifia Evan forward, and she nervously steps up to the altar. Sweating with intense anxiety, Lifia hovers her trembling hand over the large crystal as the priests prepare to measure her worth. Shutting her eyes tight, she desperately begs the heavens for even a single spark of magic. Her father glares at her in utter disgust, coldly declaring her truly useless as her sister shines brightly in the background. Completely devoid of magic, a devastated Lifia is cruelly banished to live out of sight in the Western Annex. Lifia quietly trudges down a barren, dusty hallway filled with forgotten, sheet-covered furniture. Crying silently, she tries to convince herself this isolation is a blessing, sparing Sepia from having to look at her shameful older sister. Peeking out her door, Lifia is heartbroken to find no lunch delivered, realizing her meager meals are vanishing as the household forgets she even exists. Slumping against the wall in despair, she looks out at the courtyard and wonders if she will ever be provided for again. The grim routine broke when Lifia turned 13, as Sepia unexpectedly arrived at her door bearing a tray of food. Smiling with an eerie sweetness, Sepia happily announces that she brought her big sister something to eat. Overjoyed by the kindness, Lifia beams with gratitude, but Sepia ominously insists she eat every last bite of the special meal prepared just for her. The tray is unceremoniously set down, revealing stale bread and a bowl of dark, suspicious-looking soup. Unsettled, Lifia hesitates to eat, prompting Sepia to flash a chilling glare and demand to know if something is wrong. Staring at the vile soup, Lifia desperately wonders if something painful happened over the past 5 years, refusing to believe the Sepia in her memories would do this. Deciding she cannot let her sister's kindness go to waste, Lifia folds her hands and offers a sincere prayer of gratitude to the guardian goddess Lady Hestia. With a forced smile, she thanks a visibly annoyed Sepia for the precious blessing of food. Tragedy strikes 1 week after Sepia begins her food deliveries, as Lifia suddenly falls gravely ill and provokes her mother's wrath. Bursting into the room, her mother viciously berates the bedridden girl, mocking her privilege for falling asleep without eating the provided food. The cruel woman yanks Lifia from the bed, ignoring her desperate apologies and pleas that she hasn't felt well since morning. Tossed like a rag doll, Lifia violently hits the hard floor with a painful groan. Towering over her, the mother screams that Lifia is a disgrace to the Evan Count's household, bitterly blaming the girl for the misery of giving birth to her. Writhing on the floor, Lifia tragically realizes her very existence has been the illness tormenting her mother's heart all this time. Remembering her childhood, Lifia recalls quietly trying to get her mother's attention while being completely ignored. Staring into her mother's eyes, Lifia remembers a book stating that the opposite of love is indifference, finally understanding the cold reflections staring back at her. A twisted smile forms on Lifia's bruised face, finding sick comfort that her mother has finally turned her heart toward her, even if it is only with anger and hatred. Bleeding and desperate, Lifia begs her mother to stop, thanking her for everything she has done until now. The brutal beating is interrupted when Sepia's voice suddenly echoes through the halls, begging their mother to calm down. Hours later, a heavily bandaged Lifia breathes softly, resting peacefully in her bed after the horrific ordeal. Waking up without pain, Lifia happily wonders if she is alive, relieved to realize Sepia is still the same kind girl who protected her. Sepia stands quietly beside the bed, staring down at her battered older sister with an unreadable expression. Beaming through her bandages, Lifia cheerfully thanks a very confused Sepia for treating her wounds. Flustered by the unearned gratitude, Sepia yells that she has no idea what Lifia means, aggressively presenting another meal instead. Completely missing Sepia's cruel taunt about crushing the food so she would struggle, Lifia warmly thanks her sister for preparing something easy to eat. Infuriated by Lifia's endless optimism, Sepia screams about the outrageous misunderstanding and storms off to attend to business. Lifia begs her sister to wait, but Sepia forcefully slams the heavy door behind her. Left alone, Lifia ignores her crushing hunger from not eating since yesterday, cheerfully praying to Lady Hestia and thanking Sepia for the blessing. Peering at the steaming bowl, Lifia marvels at how Sepia must have thoughtfully used fire magic to heat the porridge. Sepia turns her head in disgust as Lifia gracefully accepts her daily meal with a bright smile. Lifia continues her oblivious praise, thanking Sepia for allowing her to eat warm bread porridge as if it had just been made yesterday. Disturbed by her sister's unnatural cheerfulness, a sweating Sepia demands she just hurry up and eat whatever she means. Years pass, and now at 18 years old, Lifia stands nervously before the grand double doors of the main estate. Commanded by a stern voice to get in already, Lifia takes a breath, excuses herself, and steps into the lavish parlor. Trembling slightly, Lifia looks up to see the entire Evan Count family gathered together, staring her down with cold, calculating eyes. Summoned under the guise of a discussion, Lifia listens in shock as she is suddenly ordered to marry into the household of Duke Orphan Kronos. Staring blankly at the stern man before her, Lifia realizes with absolute horror that her father just said her name for the very first time. Smiling wickedly, her mother boasts that the Duke is famous as the kingdom's greatest mage, possessing pitch-black hair that completely contrasts with Lifia's shameful white locks. Trembling at the thought of a man with highly revered black hair, Lifia wonders why someone so incredibly noble would ever take her as his bride. Leaning in with a venomous sneer, Sepia coldly advises her older sister not to expect too much from this arrangement for her own sake. Sepia cruelly reveals the dark truth that Duke Kronos hides his cursed face behind a mask, leaving him with absolutely no one willing to marry him. Clutching her chest as a sudden realization strikes her, Lifia gasps at the mention of a man always wearing a mask and wonders if it could possibly be him. Dismissing her daughter's silent shock, her mother gleefully points out that even a useless incompetent like Lifia should be grateful to marry the infamous, cursed masked Duke. Instead of breaking down in despair, Lifia flashes a blinding, radiant smile and happily accepts the arrangement as an honor far greater than she deserves. Stunned by Lifia's genuine gratitude for the wonderful opportunity, an infuriated Sepia demands to know why her sister is smiling when she is merely being sold off for a large dowry. Gazing softly at her younger sister, Lifia warmly explains that she is simply happy to finally be of some use to the Evan family one last time. Thanking Sepia for her misplaced worry, Lifia finds deep comfort in knowing this marriage will finally allow her to repay the heavy debt she owes them. Denying her concern with a flustered shout, Sepia sharply orders Lifia to gather her belongings because her escort will arrive the very next day. Eagerly excusing herself to prepare, Lifia wastes no time packing her meager clothes and cherished board game while Sepia watches her leave with a conflicted stare. Pulling a pristine black coat from her belongings, Lifia smiles as she vividly remembers the fateful day of her 15th birthday debutante ball. Hiding outside in the cold while everyone else danced inside, a younger Lifia simply huddled near the window to happily listen to the lovely music. Suddenly stepping out from the shadows, a mysterious young man gently offered his own thick coat to the shivering girl. Blushing deeply as the heavy fabric draped over her shoulders, Lifia noticed the incredibly nice scent lingering on the stranger's garment. Smiling warmly beneath his intricate half-mask and bandages, the young man simply noted the biting cold of the evening. Turning to walk away into the moonlit garden, he gifted her the coat and politely urged her to return indoors soon. Clutching the warm fabric tightly to her chest, a deeply moved Lifia called out her heartfelt thanks to the retreating figure. The solitary boy with messy black hair continued his silent march through the moonlit rose garden without ever looking back. Burying her flushed face into the borrowed collar, she swore to herself that she would never forget his unexpected grace. Staring out her lonely window in the present, Lifia cherishes that singular moment of kindness that had kept her fragile heart warm all these years. The gentle echo of his voice mentioning the cold remains permanently burned into her memory. She recalls her own desperate shout of gratitude, wishing she could have done more than just clumsily thank him. Realizing that the mysterious boy also had black hair, Lifia resolves to properly thank Duke Kronos if he truly is the man from that night. Approaching her daunting new home, she reminds herself that his past kindness was the only thing that supported her heart whenever she felt suffocated by loneliness. Stepping out of her carriage, Lifia stares in absolute awe at the sprawling Kronos ducal estate, noting it is easily twice the size of her own family's mansion. A sharply dressed man with glasses smoothly introduces himself as Joseph Vega, the head butler of the household, to which Lifia politely bows and expresses her eagerness for his guidance. Looking nervously at the passing maids, Lifia realizes that unlike her, absolutely everyone in this high-ranking ducal house possesses magic. A bespectacled servant gestures toward the open door, announcing Lifia's arrival to Lady Irene. An elegant woman named Irene Kronos warmly welcomes Lifia as her future daughter-in-law, marveling at her golden hair which marks her as a user of light magic. Wide-eyed with absolute shock, Lifia stares at the woman, having mistakenly assumed she was the Duke's older sister rather than his mother. Quickly regaining her composure, Lifia politely introduces herself and humbly apologizes for appearing in such inadequate clothing. Irene gracefully dismisses the concern, assuring Lifia they have prepared plenty of clothes for her before instructing Joseph to guide her to her room. Stepping into her sunlit new quarters, Lifia gasps in disbelief at the sheer luxury of the room. Overwhelmed by the unbelievably spacious environment, she is introduced to her new personal maid, Mia. Beaming with a bright, welcoming smile, Mia Porto introduces herself and expresses her excitement to serve. Grabbing Lifia's hands enthusiastically, Mia declares that they must begin preparations at once. Tying a delicate ribbon into Lifia's freshly styled hair, Mia proudly finishes her work. Staring at her beautiful reflection in awe, Lifia hesitantly asks if she is truly allowed to wear such a lovely dress, and the maids joyfully confirm that it suits her perfectly. Deeply moved by her first proper styling, Lifia thanks Mia before asking a pressing question. Holding up a dark, embroidered coat, Lifia asks Mia if she recognizes it, noting its resemblance to one the master used to wear long ago. Mia's eyes light up with recognition, confirming without a doubt that the black shield with the golden crown and griffin crest belongs to the House of Kronos. Smiling warmly at the memory, Lifia recalls how 3 years ago at a ball, someone kindly draped this very coat over her lightly dressed shoulders. Gazing fondly out the window, she realizes her mysterious savior was indeed Duke Kronos, though she never had the chance to ask his name at the time. Stunned by the revelation, an excited Mia gasps at the thought of the master doing something so gentle, while Lifia earnestly hopes to meet him again to properly thank him. Squealing with delight, Mia insists that Lady Irene will be absolutely thrilled to hear this romantic story. Later over tea, a beaming Irene declares the encounter must be fate, genuinely astonished that her son spoke so kindly to an outsider. Gathering her courage, Lifia asks to learn more about the Duke, prompting Irene to express her gratitude for Lifia's arrival since no one dares approach him due to his curse. Leaning forward with determined eyes, Lifia firmly states her desire to be of help to the isolated Duke. Smiling proudly, Irene recounts that her son possessed extraordinarily strong magic from birth and quickly became an attendant to the crown prince. Gifted with teleportation and control over all elements, he was heralded as the best magician in the country and served as an invaluable guard. Continuing her tale, Irene explains how he would accompany the crown prince in his hobbies, diligently gathering materials for magical research. Standing tall among the kingdom's elite, he fiercely protected the people from demon invasions and was appointed captain of the Mage Corps by the age of 12. Listening in awe, Lifia silently marvels at what an incredibly heroic person the Duke truly is. Irene's tone darkens as she reveals that tragedy struck when he was 15, shortly after inheriting the ducal title. While bravely protecting the targeted crown prince, the young Duke was struck and cursed by the basilisk demon of the cursed serpent tribe. With a somber expression, Irene details the fatal curse, explaining how his body gradually became immobilized and covered in hard scales until it consumed him entirely. Lifia, hanging her hand, explains that the demon was defeated on the spot. However, a terrible curse resembling a hex continues to gnaw away at Orphan's body day by day. The affliction rapidly progressed because he overused his magic while carrying out his duties as a captain, effectively ending his 2-year streak of suppressing it. Having retired from his captainship to recuperate, the Duke has mostly isolated himself in his room for the past 6 months. Eager to help, Lifia formally asks Lady Irene if she may care for the ailing Duke. She firmly declares that if he is suffering, she wants to at least serve him by his side. Lady Irene warmly thanks Lifia, deeply moved that she is the first person to ever offer such genuine kindness. Stepping up to the heavy door, Irene announces her presence and asks Orphan for a moment of his time. Irene pushes the door open while Lifia trails behind, nervously questioning if it is truly all right for her to intrude. Realizing she cannot tend to his sickness from the hallway, Lifia excuses herself and bravely steps inside. Her eyes widen in complete awe as she takes in the sight of the figure resting solemnly in the vast bed. She quietly realizes that the imposing man lying before her is the legendary Duke Kronos. A dropped glove suddenly reveals the horrifying extent of the affliction, prompting Irene to scream that the curse has spread too far. Overwhelmed by the tragic sight, Lady Irene stumbles back against the wall as Lifia cries out her name in concern. The Duke apologizes for causing distress, while Irene weeps, never imagining the dark curse would reach his hands. Irene realizes with a heavy heart that he must have been hiding his worsening condition with gloves this entire time. Lifia observes his pale complexion, deeply concerned by how frail the powerful man looks. Lifia gently encourages Irene to leave the rest of the care to her, stepping up to take charge of the situation. Taking a seat beside the bed, she places a cool cloth on his head and notes his terrible fever. She realizes the large mask covering his face is completely in the way of her treating him properly. Hesitating, she assumes he must not want anyone to see his face if he keeps the mask on even while sleeping. Seeing him in obvious pain, she decides she must at least loosen the tight string around his neck to help him breathe. As the mask shifts, dark, vine-like cursed markings are exposed across his bruised skin. The Duke weakly opens his eye, catching her completely off guard as he regains consciousness. Lifia freezes in absolute wonder, entirely captivated by his beautiful purple eyes. Flustered, she bolts upright and loudly introduces herself as Lifia Evan, nervously greeting the Duke. Blushing deeply, she awkwardly stammers out a question about how he is feeling. Panicking, she rambles that Lady Irene guided her there and begs him not to worry since she isn't anyone suspicious. Staring up at the frantic girl, the Duke quietly asks if she is his new wife. Completely ignoring his question, Lifia vows to overcome her shortcomings to help him, leaving the Duke to wonder aloud about this strange new wife. The Duke tells Lifia he will speak to his mother and give her severance money so she can leave, leaving her confused. He explains with a bitter smile that she is the third woman sent here to act as his wife. The Duke recounts how the first bride trembled with fear and cried, while the second called him a monster and refused to come near. Both previous women left immediately as soon as they received their severance pay. Staring at her with sad eyes, he assumes she wouldn't truly want to bear the child of a cursed monster like him regardless of her circumstances. Lifia looks down with a heavy heart, wondering why he says such incredibly sad things about himself. Suddenly, the Duke groans in pain and collapses, alarming Lifia. Rushing to his side as he clutches his chest, Lifia urgently promises that she will support him. Flinching away from her outstretched hands, the Duke aggressively yells at her not to touch him. Realizing his harshness as Lifia pulls back in shock, he immediately stammers out a quiet apology. Recovering from her surprise, Lifia gently asks the Duke to let her stay by his side, noting that he really is a kind person for apologizing after startling her. The Duke repeats her words in confusion, prompting Lifia to earnestly confess that she has always wanted to thank him. Blushing slightly as he admits that might have happened, the Duke listens as Lifia recalls how he draped his coat over her shivering shoulders at the Evan family's ball 3 years ago. Looking up at the memory of his past self, Lifia tearfully explains that it was truly the very first time someone had ever shown her that kind of concern. Beaming with pure joy, she tells the stunned Duke that she had always hoped to meet that person again just to express her gratitude. Smiling gently beside his bed, Lifia pleads for permission to stay by his side even if it is only until he gets better. Covering his cursed face with a trembling hand, the Duke asks if she isn't afraid of him since he is cursed and repulsive, despite her claim that his past kindness supported her heart. Gripping her dress tightly, Lifia firmly declares that appearance doesn't matter because she intimately knows how painful it is to receive cold, directed stares. Lifia explains that during those hard days of isolation, his kindness was the only thing that truly saved her. Reaching out to hold his cursed hand, she smiles warmly and asks if it really is nothing to worry about. The Duke stares in wide-eyed shock at the genuine, gentle contact from the young woman. Looking at him with teary, devoted eyes, Lifia firmly states that she wants to support the person who saved her. She gazes at him with absolute adoration, recognizing him as the man who possesses such warm and unwavering kindness. Snapping back to the present situation, Lifia warns the Duke that his face will swell if he rubs it too much and offers to fetch a new towel. Blushing furiously and looking away, the Duke apologizes for showing her such a pathetic sight, though Lifia frantically insists that isn't true at all. A heavy silence falls over the room before Lifia softly reassures him that it is perfectly fine after he apologizes again for suddenly raising his voice. Realizing he might need a distraction, Lifia suddenly asks if His Grace is hungry, knowing he wouldn't want someone he just met to see him crying. Pulling the bedsheets up to hide his flustered face, the Duke politely declines and claims he doesn't really have much of an appetite. Undeterred, Lifia passionately argues that she read in a book that nutrition is essential to cure an illness and begs him to eat at least a little bit. Springing up from her chair before he can protest, Lifia declares she will go ask the kitchens to make him something while the flustered Duke weakly tries to stop her. Gazing quietly at the bandaged Duke orphan, Lifia hesitates near the doorway as he looks down in weary silence. Gazing at him with shimmering eyes, Lifia senses that he silently wants her to stay right there beside him. Urging him to wait just a moment, she promises not to worry and vows to return immediately after asking for permission. Flushed and holding her cheeks, she takes a deep breath to steady herself, wondering why she feels so incredibly nervous. Shaking her head to regain focus, she peeks through the doorway and reminds herself that she needs to fetch the food. Standing quietly outside the massive double doors, she wonders if the exhausted Duke has already fallen back asleep. Slipping softly through the heavy doors, she whispers a polite excuse as she enters his chambers. Seeing him resting peacefully in bed, she nods to herself, confirming her suspicion that he had drifted off. Observing his calm expression, she feels a wave of relief noting that he looks far less distressed than before. Pulling a chair close to his bedside, she settles in to quietly watch over him as he rests. The reliable butler Joseph enters the room, pushing a serving cart and announcing that her meal is ready. Lifia panics realizing she forgot to update him, but Joseph simply smiles upon seeing that his master has fallen asleep again. She deeply apologizes for wasting the meal he so kindly prepared, but Joseph warmly waves off her concern. Gesturing to the cart, Joseph gently suggests that Lifia should at least eat her portion by herself. Thanking him sincerely, she refuses the offer, firmly deciding she will wait to eat together with His Grace when he wakes. Joseph's eyes soften as he reflects that food surely tastes better when shared, admitting he hasn't experienced that warmth much himself. Smiling warmly at her dedication, Joseph asks her to notify him if anything changes, and she diligently agrees. Bowing deeply, Lifia thanks him and marvels aloud at how incredibly kind everyone in this house is. Pausing at the door, the butler kindly requests she drop the honorifics and simply call him Joseph. Flustered by his casual request, she stammers an apology and nervously admits she isn't used to such relaxed treatment. Gripping her dress, she shyly explains that while she understands proper manners, this level of kindness is still foreign to her. Turning her attention back to the Duke, she gently checks his condition and notes that his fever hasn't broken yet. Moving efficiently around the room, she prepares a change of clothes and worries if he will be strong enough to eat later. Resting her head on the edge of his bed, she softly prays for his recovery before exhaustion finally pulls her into slumber. Orphan slowly opens his bandaged eyes and softly apologizes, asking if his stirring woke her. Jolting awake in utter panic as sunlight floods the room, Lifia stammers apologies while Orphan gently notes that she stayed by his side the entire night. Flashing a handsome smile, Orphan credits her diligent nursing for breaking his fever and making his body feel lighter, filling Lifia with immense joy. Orphan realizes she skipped dinner to wait for him and immediately offers to order a fresh meal for them both. Shaking her head adamantly, Lifia insists on eating the meal from the night before, despite Orphan's warning that it must be cold and tasteless by now. Beaming brightly at the untouched food, she refuses to waste the hard work of the household staff, declaring that it still looks absolutely delicious. Folding her hands in quiet reverence, Lifia offers a sincere prayer of thanks to the guardian goddess Lady Hestia for her precious blessings. To her utter shock, thick steam begins rising from the dining table as the stale bread and cold food magically warm up before her eyes. When the bewildered Duke asks if she heated the meal, a flustered Lifia denies it and explains that her younger sister usually cast warming magic on her food. Oblivious to her own latent power, she innocently wonders if a servant used magic or if her prayers triggered a hidden mechanism since Sepia isn't around. The Duke explains that his fire magic would only burn off the moisture, asking her to hand him a piece of the freshly restored bread to examine. Observing the perfectly warm bread, the Duke smiles softly and suggests that this unbelievable restoration could be a miracle brought about by her prayer. Lifia's jaw drops in pure disbelief, her eyes widening as she stammers that such a miraculous feat is completely impossible for someone like her. The Duke's expression darkens with deep sympathy as he realizes she was denied proper meals despite her noble birth, asking if she lived in such cruelty her entire life. Forcing a painful smile, Lifia explains she was punished for lacking magic power but still felt forced to show gratitude to her family for barely supporting her. Clenching her fists, she tearfully recalls the heartbreaking day of her own debutante, a major milestone event her family cruelly forbade her from attending. The Duke bitterly notes that leaving the main character out under the cold sky is undeniable proof of their severe mistreatment. He firmly states that by marrying into his house, the massive dowry his mother paid to the Count's family has more than repaid any imagined debt she owed them. Gazing at her with gentle intensity, he insists she no longer needs to feel a single ounce of gratitude toward the people who so callously abused her. Lifia processes his comforting words with wide eyes, quietly asking if her debt is truly repaid, to which the Duke offers a reassuring smile. Filled with a sudden rush of resolve, she places a hand over her heart and formally vows to offer her eternal gratitude and properly serve his grace. Hearing her intense, servant-like declaration, the Duke blinks in utter confusion. Flustered by her massive misunderstanding, he frantically points out that she came here as his wife, not a maid, and begs her to just sit down for a moment. Looking down humbly, Lifia admits she feels entirely unworthy of becoming the wife of the great Duke she so deeply admires. Desperate to prove her worth to the household, she enthusiastically promises to clean, do laundry, and perform any chore to make up for her lack of capable skills. The Duke tenderly reaches out to take her hand, softly calling her name and immediately capturing her full, breathless attention. Staring deeply into her shimmering eyes, he earnestly asks if she would be willing to stay by his side as his true wife from this moment on. Flashing a charming, confident smile from beneath his bandages, the Duke gently asks for her thoughts on his heartfelt proposal. Lifia feels her heart race, realizing with absolute certainty from his warm grip that his grace truly needs her. She recognizes the profound sincerity in his touch, understanding exactly how much this single moment means. Looking into his beautiful gaze, she sees his purple eyes eloquently pleading with her to accept his hand. Nervously clutching her dress, Lifia points out her lack of magic compared to his immense power, terrified that her presence will only make him uncomfortable. The Duke dismisses her insecurities with a warm smile, reassuring her that there is no need to worry because they can perfectly make up for whatever the other lacks. Tears well up in Lifia's eyes as she softly asks if she can truly be helpful enough to make up for her perceived flaws and lack of magic. He gently encourages her to just do the things she likes, declaring that simply having her warm presence and radiant smile by his side would make him infinitely happy. Recalling the beautiful moment they first connected, the Duke confesses he was truly happy when she held his cursed hand without a single moment of hesitation. Orphan apologetically explains that he pulled away earlier because he thought his cursed touch might make her uncomfortable. Lifia frantically reassures him that she properly understood it was just his kindness, prompting another gentle apology from the Duke. Looking down with a somber expression, Orphan quietly admits that he does not know how much longer he has left to live. He confesses that even though he knows it isn't the best course of action for her happiness, he still ends up selfishly wishing for it. Tears welling up in her eyes, a deeply moved Lifia asks the Duke exactly what kind of future he is wishing for. Smiling with profound tenderness, Orphan declares that he wants to walk together with her for the rest of his life. Lifia clutches her chest as her heart begins to pound violently from an incredibly warm, fluffy feeling spreading within her. Heavy tears of pure joy stream down her flushed face as she wonders if this overwhelming emotion is what people call true happiness. Blushing softly, Orphan asks her to start calling him by his name, to which an elated Lifia eagerly agrees. Smiling radiantly through her tears, she calls him Lord Orphan for the very first time as he affectionately acknowledges her. Taking her small hands into his own, Orphan warmly asks Lifia to get along with him from now on. Eager to cause a real miracle, Lifia asks for permission to continue praying while gently holding his cursed, scaled hand. Closing her eyes in deep devotion, she offers her heartfelt gratitude to the heavens for allowing her to meet Lord Orphan. She fervently prays that if her wish may be granted, she wants their future ahead to be spent entirely together. Suddenly, a blinding, magical light erupts from their joined hands, startling the young couple out of their peaceful moment. Lifia gasps in absolute shock and points at Orphan's hand as the mysterious light begins to fade away. The hardened, cursed scales covering his fingers suddenly crack and dissolve into glowing motes of light. Orphan stares in utter disbelief as the monstrous scales completely vanish, leaving his skin perfectly smooth and healed. The entire household staff erupts into a joyous, tearful celebration, declaring that they should make this miraculous day a national holiday. A weeping Lady Irene tightly grasps Lifia's hands, profusely thanking the young girl for becoming their ultimate light of hope. Feeling the older woman's hands trembling with overwhelming joy, Lifia realizes just how deeply the staff cares for their master. Observing the situation, the head butler Joseph deduces that Lifia's miraculous healing ability is most likely sacred power. Joseph explains that sacred power is an ancient, legendary ability that was once exclusively possessed by the great saints. He notes that this divine power can completely heal illnesses and only manifests in individuals who possess absolutely zero magic. Smiling affectionately at his new bride, Orphan points out that her unique traits perfectly match the legendary qualities of a saint. Orphan realizes that since his curse couldn't be undone by any magical effort, her divine power is the only logical explanation for his sudden recovery. Hearing this revelation, Lifia silently wonders if this sacred power is the reason her own past injuries always healed unnaturally fast overnight. A few peaceful days pass at the sprawling ducal estate as Lifia happily settles into her new, comfortable life. Noticing her staring off into space, a worried Orphan gently asks his wife if something is bothering her. Beaming with renewed determination, Lifia happily declares she is simply savoring the joy of finally being able to help the person she cherishes most. Clenching her fists with quiet determination, Lifia steels her resolve to do her absolute best. Smiling softly with tears shimmering in her eyes, she hopes that by proving her worth, she can remain by Lord Orphan's side just a little longer. Orphan smiles gently at her, holding her hand and softly calling her name. Suddenly, Lady Irene bursts into the room with an oversized document, eagerly instructing the two to sign their marriage registration immediately. As Orphan sighs that she is rushing things without even taking off her coat, Irene cheerfully insists on striking while the iron is hot and submitting the form to the Grand Isis Temple today. Taking the pen, Irene confidently declares she will sign as Orphan's proxy, asking if that is acceptable. Lifia looks on in surprise as Orphan firmly rejects the offer, insisting he will write the vow with his new bride himself. Leaning forward over the document, Orphan grips the quill with unwavering determination. Pausing with the pen in hand, he calls out to Lifia with a gentle, inviting gaze. Beaming with absolute joy, Lifia immediately offers her hand so they can write it together. A warm, genuine smile spreads across Orphan's bandaged face as he quietly thanks her. Working together in perfect harmony, the newlywed couple carefully guides the quill to sign their official marriage registration. Clapping his hands in delight, Joseph watches as a thrilled Irene happily accepts the completed document. Turning serious, Lifia asks if Irene plans to report her newfound power to the temple, but the Duchess firmly shakes her head. Irene explains that an appraisal would take over half a year due to the temple currently dealing with a troublesome false saint problem. Pondering the situation, Lifia recalls that fundamentally restoring the dying world tree requires sacred power rather than the standard magic currently prolonging its life. Looking at his new wife, Orphan clarifies that only a formal temple appraisal can officially determine if someone actually possesses this rare sacred power. A worried Lifia realizes the massive delay is because only a handful of light attribute magic elites are even capable of performing the complex appraisal. Flashing a mischievous grin, Irene declares that she has no desire to forcefully separate the newlyweds for such a tedious and devilish process. Blushing furiously, The couple shrinks back as Irene bids the newlyweds a cheerful goodbye and departs. Looking out the window at the departing carriage, Lifia feels immense gratitude to be able to welcome this new day with Lord Orphan. Turning back to her husband, her smile falters slightly as she realizes that no further parts of his scaly curse have dissolved since his hand was freed. A dark wave of anxiety washes over her as she fears her power is too weak and that her lack of value will soon be exposed. Trembling with deep insecurity, she wonders if she will be cruelly abandoned once again just like her family did to her. Sensing her overwhelming distress, Orphan gently reassures her that there is absolutely no need to feel anxious. Resting his head affectionately against hers, he smiles and promises that simply having her by his side exactly as she is makes him incredibly happy. Gazing deeply into her eyes, Orphan vows she will never be abandoned because her warm hands and accepting gaze prove her true worth to him. Staring at his handsome, loving face, Lifia feels her chest pound wildly and wonders what this overwhelming new emotion could possibly be. Blushing beautifully, she promises to pray for his recovery again tomorrow while secretly hoping she will eventually understand these racing feelings. The intimate moment is suddenly interrupted by Colt, a cheerful servant who arrives with their meal, prompting an embarrassed Orphan to sigh heavily. Smiling brightly, Lifia holds up a spoonful of food and playfully encourages Lord Orphan to open his mouth. After she offers him some warm soup, Orphan quietly accepts the bite while Lifia silently swoons over how incredibly adorable he is. Blushing deeply, Lifia recalls a romance novel stating that this intimate feeding is exactly how truly close couples behave. While Orphan quietly questions what kind of strange book she has been reading, Lifia feels a wave of pure relief that his appetite is gradually returning. Triumphant, Lifia flashes a subtle thumbs up, realizing the secret strategy meeting she held with the mansion staff was entirely worth the effort. Recalling the urgent gathering, she remembers how the concerned servants revealed that Orphan's food intake had become overwhelmingly small ever since they began sharing meals. Peeking through the cracked door, a worried Lifia previously watched him merely pick at bread and sip tea, terrified his failing body would completely waste away. Refusing to stand by helplessly, Lifia convened with Lady Irene, the attending physician, and the head chef to discuss a highly concerning possibility. She brilliantly deduced that since he signed their marriage registration with his right hand, the cursed affliction was preventing him from comfortably using his dominant side. Hearing her sharp deduction, the astonished physician loudly confirmed that her theory was highly probable. The group realized that the fiercely proud and refined Duke simply could not bear the humiliation of clumsily relearning how to eat with an unfamiliar hand. The head chef wept in tragic realization, understanding that improving the food's taste was completely meaningless if Orphan could not physically bring the fork to his mouth. Formulating an immediate plan, the energized chef promised to prepare small, highly nutritious meals while the group pondered how to actually feed him. Slamming her hands together, Lifia excitedly announced that she finally had the perfect opportunity to test a romantic rule she read in her favorite book. Beaming with determined pride, she boldly declared that she would step up and personally become her husband's right hand. The quiet, loving strategy proves to be a massive success, steadily increasing the Duke's food intake and restoring enough stamina for him to stay awake longer. Half a year later, the dedicated care miraculously expands Orphan's range of activity, allowing him to finally enjoy peaceful walks in the lush garden. Strolling through the vibrant courtyard, Lifia excitedly points out the magnificent scenery to her husband. She marvels at a stunning cluster of blue roses, her eyes shining as she admits it is her very first time seeing such a beautiful flower. Orphan gently reveals that he specifically asked the gardener to plant those exact roses to match the breathtaking color of his wife's eyes. Blushing furiously, Lifia shyly covers her flushed cheeks, deeply moved by the realization that her husband views her in such a beautiful light. Pointing to the adjacent blooms, she beams with pure joy, noting that the nearby purple roses perfectly match his own lovely gaze. Staring at her with profound affection, Orphan confesses he planted them side by side as a solemn vow that he wants to remain with her forever. His gentle smile carries a tragic undertone as he softly adds that the immortal flowers will ensure she never feels lonely, even after his cursed body eventually rots away. The devastating reality suddenly crashes down on Lifia as she remembers his curse has merely paused, offering absolutely no guarantee that their current happiness will last. Looking at his peaceful but resigned expression, her heart shatters upon realizing that her beloved husband has been quietly preparing for his own inevitable death. Trembling with overwhelming emotion, Lifia aggressively buries her face into his chest, prompting a surprised orphan to softly call her name. Tears streaming down her face, she desperately cries out that walking together makes her endlessly happy and that she only wants him by her side. Gripping his shirt tightly, she sobs and fiercely begs him to stop speaking of death, absolutely refusing to accept a future where she loses him. Struck by the raw, desperate purity of her love, a single tear slips from Orphan's eye as he finally allows himself to feel genuine hope. Overwhelmed by the blinding light of her miracle, Lifia tearfully calls out Orphan's name in sheer disbelief. Gently touching his own face, Orphan stares in utter shock as Lifia points out that the cursed scales on his cheek have completely vanished. Tracing his fingers down his neck, the astounded Duke realizes the monstrous affliction is disappearing from there as well. He frantically checks under his sleeves, confirming that the hardened scales are dissolving into nothingness all over his body. Moving his newly healed arm with ease, Orphan rejoices that his physical freedom has returned and profusely thanks a weeping Lifia for saving him. Stepping closer to his bride, he softly confesses that he finally understands the pounding in his chest, admitting he has always wanted to hold her with these very hands. Gazing up at him with tear-filled eyes, Lifia realizes that this overwhelming, warm emotion in her chest must surely be love. Leaning in with profound tenderness, Orphan gently declares that he can finally tell her his true feelings. Embracing her tightly in the middle of the blooming rose garden, Orphan passionately vows that he loves her. Sometime later, the season turns to a bright summer as Orphan, Lifia, and his mother Irene enjoy a peaceful tea party together in the sunlit parlor. Irene casually stirs her tea with a knowing smile, watching the young couple interact with fond amusement. Smiling warmly at his wife, Orphan offers Lifia a taste of the sugary treats and assures her that they are absolutely delicious. Taking a calm sip of his own tea, the Duke relaxes in the tranquil atmosphere of his newfound happiness. Orphan teasingly warns Lifia not to copy his mother's extreme sweet tooth lest she regret it, though Irene playfully argues that her daughter-in-law might handle it just fine. Noticing the lingering scales around his eyes beneath the mask, Lifia still feels incredibly happy to see Orphan becoming more energetic every single day. Their peaceful afternoon is interrupted when Joseph arrives with a royal invitation to the winter ball, which Orphan immediately orders him to decline as usual. A disappointed Lifia secretly wishes she could attend a grand ball with her husband, immediately feeling guilty for harboring such selfish desires. Catching the wistful expression on her daughter-in-law's face, Irene silently observes the young girl's hidden longing. Seizing the opportunity, Irene playfully urges her son to attend the ball with Lifia, brushing off Orphan's protective worry that his beautiful wife might attract nasty pests. Sighing heavily at his mother's persistence, Orphan relents when he notices Lifia staring longingly at the unopened royal invitation. Flustered by the sudden attention, Lifia stammers that she cannot even dance but hopefully adds that she would love to learn someday. Cupping her face with a dreamy smile, Lifia admits that attending a royal ball alongside Lord Orphan would be absolutely wonderful. Suddenly filled with determination, Lifia grabs her husband's hand and eagerly declares they should go practice right now. Smiling brightly at her enthusiasm, Orphan gently takes her hand and promises to lead her, assuring her that simply stepping to the beat is enough. Feeling deeply treasured by the man she loves, Lifia realizes that having infinite hearts still would not be enough to contain her immense joy. Wrapping his arms around her from behind, Orphan confidently orders Joseph to send the invitation back with their confirmation to attend. As Joseph happily bows to execute the command, a completely stunned Lifia asks her husband if he is truly sure about going. Looking warmly into her eyes, Orphan formally asks if she will grant him the honor of being her escort while they practice their dancing. Weeping tears of overwhelming joy at her immense luck, Lifia thanks him profusely as Orphan quickly orders his mother to summon the kingdom's finest designers and jewelers. While Lifia panics over the extravagant preparations, Irene laughs brightly and promises to make her daughter-in-law the most beautiful flower at the entire venue. Looking out at the estate grounds, Lifia quietly notes that things are somehow becoming incredibly grand. A few days later, a massive preparation effort is fully underway inside the manor. Standing in absolute awe, Lifia exclaims that the entire room is completely dazzling with beautiful dresses. Orphan asks if a particular dress catches her eye, noting that anything would suit her beautiful white hair, but a flustered Lifia admits they are all too wonderful to choose from. Gripping his sleeve nervously, Lifia confesses she lacks confidence in her taste since she has never participated in high society before. Looking up with hesitant eyes, She shyly asks Lord Orphan to choose something that would perfectly suit her. Surprised but clearly pleased, Orphan confirms she is giving him the right to choose, and she politely agrees if it is not too much trouble. Fired up with enthusiasm, Orphan declares he will find the absolute best outfit and immediately calls for Mia's support, who eagerly accepts the challenge. Analyzing Lifia's features, Mia suggests keeping the color scheme in pastel blues rather than vivid colors to perfectly complement her clear blue eyes and cool-toned skin. Exhausted by their incredible passion, Lifia takes a much-needed break on the couch while Orphan and Mia intensely debate the dress modifications. A cheerful merchant named Madame approaches the resting Lifia and offers her a special jewelry box. Opening the ornate box, the merchant reveals high-quality amethyst accessories crafted in the exact same color as the Duke's eyes. The merchant smiles brightly, explaining that the radiant gems remind her of the first time she saw Lord Orphan's eyes when he bravely protected their gemstone mine from demons. She recounts that while the Duke humbly claimed it was only his duty and refused a reward, they desperately wanted to repay their massive debt. Gesturing to the dazzling gems, the merchant reveals she has been secretly preparing this gift bit by bit as the high-quality amethyst was mined. Flustered by the grand presentation, Lifia stammers in shock, but the merchant insists she would be deeply honored if Lifia accepted it. The merchant warmly explains that wearing accessories matching a partner's eye color to a party is a profound proof of unchanging love. She adds with a cheerful grin that accentuating the beauty of his lovely wife is entirely synonymous with giving a gift directly to the Duke himself. Overcome with emotion, the merchant declares she simply cannot ignore her deep feelings of respect and gratitude toward Lord Orphan. Deeply moved by the story, Lifia clutches the box to her chest and sincerely thanks the merchant for the truly wonderful item. Orphan suddenly approaches and asks Lifia if she found any accessories she particularly liked. The merchant playfully winks at Lifia to keep their secret, while Orphan looks on with a gentle smile. Panicking because she almost ruined the merchant's kind gesture, Lifia quickly covers up by claiming they are all so wonderful she simply cannot decide. Without missing a beat, Orphan casually declares that there is no need to choose and immediately instructs the staff to buy them all. Shocked by the extravagant purchase, Lifia asks if he is absolutely sure, but Orphan casually reassures her that she needed items for everyday use anyway. The merchant enthusiastically confirms the massive order for everything in Lifia's size, excitedly asking for further instructions on the shoes and hair ornaments. Sweating nervously amidst towering piles of purchased boxes, Lifia anxiously asks Lord Orphan if it is truly okay to buy her this much. Orphan calmly replies that it is more than fine, boldly asserting that if anything, it is still not enough. He reassures her not to worry about money, explaining that between his royal service savings, vast inheritance, and territory tax revenue, he could play around his whole life and never go broke. Smiling with relaxed confidence, Orphan reminds a stunned Lifia that this is the Wisteria Kingdom's one and only ducal house, operating on a completely different level of wealth. Lifia reflects that if Orphan hadn't been cursed, a magicless girl like her would never have been able to associate with such a high-ranking noble. Orphan gently apologizes for hiding his real face, confessing that his selfish desire to see her in all sorts of different ways was simply something he couldn't hold back. Flashing a warm smile from beneath his bandages, Orphan sincerely thanks her for going along with him today and admits he was very happy. Staring up at her husband, Lifia feels the heavy weight in her chest completely vanish. She realizes that having Orphan take a genuine interest in her makes her incredibly happy, understanding that true connection comes from the desire to know more about the other person. Gazing lovingly at him, Lifia silently vows to learn more about her husband and hopes to one day see the true smile hidden beneath his cursed mask. When a flustered Orphan asks if she disliked anything and offers to call another merchant company, Lifia beams brightly and declares that she absolutely loved everything. Looking at the massive pile of purchased gifts, Lifia hilariously realizes she must never show even a hint of hesitation when shopping in front of her doting husband. As time passes, the recovering Lord Orphan slowly begins going on official missions as a helper, inspecting his territory and responding to aid requests. Meanwhile, Lifia works tirelessly to perfect her noble manners and dance routines, allowing a peaceful month to pass by. During a well-deserved break, Lifia cheerfully thanks Orphan for joining her dance lessons, thrilled that she can finally step along happily. When Joseph announces that Lord Astor has arrived, an annoyed Orphan instantly orders the butler to lie about him being unwell and send the guest away so they can keep dancing. Seeing the butler completely at a loss, Lifia nervously points out Joseph's distress and asks if it is really alright to just dismiss the guest. Orphan clicks his tongue in annoyance, fiercely declaring that he absolutely refuses to let anyone interrupt his precious time with Lifia, especially someone like Aster. Watching her husband's rare display of childish stubbornness, Lifia curiously wonders who this mysterious Lord Aster could possibly be. Suddenly, a flamboyant man bursts into the room and lightly smacks Orphan, loudly scolding Lou for speaking so terribly to his absolute best friend. The dazzling newcomer smoothly takes Lifia's hand, introducing himself as Aster Visteria and dramatically comparing her beauty to the radiance of melting stars. As Aster flashes a charming smile and greets her, a furious Orphan glares daggers at the man from right over Lifia's shoulder. Lifia freezes as she processes his royal surname, while a terrifyingly enraged Orphan ruthlessly grabs Aster's face to pull him away from his wife. While Aster whines about the painful grip, Orphan coldly tells him to stop taking his jokes too far, officially revealing that this eccentric man is Aster, the crown prince. Utterly horrified by the casual violence being inflicted on royalty, Lifia turns completely pale as she realizes she is standing in the presence of the crown prince.